Hi everybody, it's Terry Ryder from Hotspotting. This is Hotspot of the Week, and this week I'm going to feature regional Queensland. We're actually currently working on the new edition of our top 5 regional Queensland hotspots report, and one of the locations that we have decided to include for the first time in a while is the important central Queensland regional city of Rockhampton, where we've noticed that sales activity in that market is rising. Vacancies have come down a lot, rents are rising, and we're starting to see the first signs of a return to price growth. It's part of a trend that we've been seeing over the last year or so in regional Queensland, particularly central Queensland, those markets that have been perhaps adversely affected in the last few years by the previous downturn in the resources sector, which is now coming back quite strongly. And so one by one, we're seeing regional centres that have been in various ways impacted by that coming into recovery modes and moving to growth. Mackay has perhaps been the leader of that. That market currently is very strong. The local economy has picked up a lot. Vacancies have come down a lot in Mackay, rents are rising strongly, and we're seeing prices follow suit. So that's one market that's probably ahead of the pack. We're starting to see the first real signs of recovery in prices in the Gladstone market after many down years. And now we think that Rockhampton's joining that trend towards recovery and ultimately into becoming a rising market again. There's quite a lot going on in the Rockhampton economy, and there's quite a bit being spent on infrastructure currently, and also big projects that are proposed to happen with starts expected later this year, which are going to help drive economic recovery in Rockhampton and that central Queensland region. And against that background, Rockhampton appeals because it's very affordable, prices are very cheap, the rental returns are great, some of the best in Australia, and the vacancies are very low. So generally speaking, it's starting to look a whole lot better for that market, and it's one that might be worthy consideration for investors on a budget looking for markets that provide cheap entry prices, good rental returns, and prospects for growth moving forward. Quite a diverse economy, Rockhampton. It's known for a few things. One is it markets itself as the beef capital of Australia. Certainly the cattle industry is very important to the economy of Rockhampton. Agriculture generally is important, so is tourism. The military has a major impact. It gets big spin-offs from the mining sector when it's pumping, and perhaps tends to suffer when it's not. Manufacturing is also important. So yeah, Rockhampton, generally regarded as perhaps the provincial capital of central Queensland. It's on the banks of the Fitzroy River, about a bit over 600 kilometres north of Brisbane. It's currently got a population a bit over 80,000. It's projected that in the next 15 or so years, that population will have increased to more than 100,000. So a growing regional city. It has something we always look for as a diverse economy, and Rockhampton has quite a nice level of diversity. As I mentioned, agriculture is very important, beef production, all kinds of, there's coffee grown, pineapples, oranges, seafood's important. So the agricultural sector and the beef sector is a big part of the economy there. Construction's important, services to the tourism industry, transport is a major industry in Rockhampton. Queensland Rail has a large workforce in the city, and there's also quite a bit of rail activity in connection with the resources sector, where there's a lot of action in the Bowen Basin, not far from Rockhampton. The Rockhampton Airport's pretty busy. 750,000 passengers use the airport in a typical year, with direct flights to the state capital, Brisbane, as well as many other regional centres around Queensland. The Bowen Basin mining province is about 3 hours drive from Rockhampton, and when major mines are happening, Rockhampton tends to be a source of fly-in, fly-out workers. Rockhampton also has nearby the Stanwell Power Station. So strong links to the resources sector. Australian Defence Force has an impact. About 70 kilometres away is Shoalwater Bay, where major training exercises by the Australian Defence Force happen, and that's expected to escalate with the agreement signed a couple of years ago with Singapore, a $1 billion deal to do upgrades to the infrastructure there to do joint training exercises between the militaries of Australia and Singapore. Tourism injects over $500 million of direct expenditure into the Rockhampton region each year, so that's a happening thing as well. So yeah, there's plenty of diversity in the economy, but notwithstanding that, it tends to be a place that can rise and fall depending on whether the resources sector is pumping or whether it's in downturn. So Rockhampton has been a growth market in the past. It's been through a few years of downturn. Some suburbs still have prices down in annual terms, but we're starting to see signs of recovery. The first thing that stands out about the property market of Rockhampton is just how affordable it is. A lot of suburbs have median prices in the 200,000s. There's a couple of suburbs, including the well-known suburb of Berserker, where the median house price is 180,000. Central Rockhampton, its median house price is 160,000. And then there are other suburbs in the 200,000s. The most expensive suburb in terms of median house price is Norman Gardens, and its median house price is 395,000. So very affordable, particularly for people sitting in major cities. Those prices are eye-wateringly low. And then you start to notice how big the rental yields, the median yield. So many of these suburbs, Rockhampton City, is 8%. Berserker at 7.5%. Also 7.5% typical yields in West Rockhampton. And those strong rental yields are supported by the fact that vacancies are very low. This is a factor that's been a precursor to a return to growth for markets like Mackay. Mackay's vacancies a few years ago were very high, and then steadily they came down. And once they got below 3%, then we started to see rents rise. And right now, Mackay vacancies are about 1.5%, and rents are rising strongly, and the rest of the property market is rising, piggybacking off that situation with low vacancies and high rentals. Now, in Rockhampton, there are 4 major postcodes covering that region, and all of them have vacancy rates around 1.5%. So vacancy is very low, rents are starting to rise, so the rental yields are strong because prices, generally speaking, haven't risen much yet. So if you're interested in buying in Rockhampton, it's probably a good time because there are signs that that market's rising. We're starting to see increased sales activity. That's showed up in the research we do for the Price Predictor Index, our quarterly report, where we examine sales activity, and Rockhampton stands out as a market that's on the rise in that regard. It's starting to show up in some of the price data, although most suburbs still have median prices lower than 12 months ago. So if you believe in the future of Rockhampton, the timing would be pretty good to get into that market. Now, the local council, the Rockhampton City Council, is trying to boost the property market by offering a grant, a $5,000 grant, which kicked off on the 1st of August for people building new homes in the Rockhampton area. There are up to 200 new homes will be eligible for that incentive, as the council is seeking to give stimulus to the local building industry. Now, the most important thing we always look for in an area that we might include in our hotspots report is what does the future hold? And very much it depends on what's planned or what's currently under construction in terms, firstly, of infrastructure and then other forms of development. And in the case of Rockhampton, there's rather a lot. For example, there's a major proposal for the Rockhampton Ring Road, a 22-kilometre bypass, which has approval. The federal government has agreed to chip in $800 million, and the state government has agreed to provide $200 million. So it's $1 billion project to improve road infrastructure around Rockhampton. There's a couple of other big road projects under construction, not as big as that one, but big nevertheless. The Rockhampton Northern Access Upgrade, $120 million project, that's underway. There are other projects of that nature happening. Then we have the Rookwood Weir project, which is approved, with construction expected to begin in 2019. That's to expand irrigated agricultural production in the in the Rockhampton area. That's a $500 million project. There's an expansion of the Capricornia Correction Centre. They're spending $250 million on that. There's also a very big integrated alternative energy project called Clark Creek Integrated Wind, Solar and Battery Power Station, which is approved. The construction expected to begin late this year, and that's a $1.5 billion project. And there's a whole lot more going on, including in residential construction. Stockland, one of the biggest property developers in the nation, is proposing to spend over time $575 million on its Allada residential development, and there are a few other developments in the works of similar size and scope. So there's a lot happening in Rockhampton, and it's an important regional city. It's the provincial capital of Central Queensland. It's a regional city of 80,000, heading towards 100,000 sometime in the next 15 or 20 years. The local economy is strengthening. The local property market is recovering, and we're starting to see signs of prices starting to rise, and that very affordable market with strong rental yields and low vacancies. So Rockhampton has got a Guernsey in the new edition of Top 5 Regional Queensland Hotspots, which we're in the process of putting together this week. And yeah, I think it's a worthy inclusion. It's been a good performer in the past. It's been in the doldrums for a few years, like many other regional centres have been in recent years in Queensland, but it's following the trend to recovery and growth again. So Rockhampton, worthy of consideration, I think. Affordable, good rental yields, low vacancies, growing economy. Give it some thought. That's it for now. That's Hotspot of the Week for this week. Terry Ryder from Hotspotting signing off. Let's do it again same time next week.